everybody, and welcome to the Everything Voiceover podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres, and here at this podcast, we try and bring you all the information you need to get started in a career in voiceover. All the ins and outs, all the ups and downs, and all the unsolved mysteries that you want to know probably before you start putting in money to become a voiceover artist. My name is Justin D. Torres. I've been doing voiceover on my own for about 5 years now. I'm represented in New York by 2 agencies, and I've done probably about 700 jobs total since I've been doing voiceover. So I've done everything from the small, pointless jobs that are nothing to larger commercial jobs up here in New York where you go into a studio and you do your thing. I have my own home studio. What we're going to try to do today is do a general overview about what is voiceover, the different types of voiceover, the types of payments you get for all the different categories of voiceover, the main difference between union and non-union, how people get jobs, the pluses and minuses of doing freelance, and at the end, hopefully, I'll have all the information to give you the answer of whether or not you should go into voiceover. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so what types of voiceover are there? First, you've got the big three, which is commercials, video games, and cartoons. Those are going to be the ones that are the big money, for the most part. You've got industrials, which is where companies create videos for their own company, where they try and explain about onboarding or tutorials about how to use specific things. You've also got dubbing, which is where you take a foreign film, and they're paying you basically to redo the entire dialogue in English or whatever language you speak. You've also got things like tutorials, which is usually website-oriented, where you try and explain how to or how to get from point A to point B on a website, or how to use a specific software. Well, you've also got website intros and sizzle reels, which are kind of like promotional commercials for websites. Another interesting thing you can get jobs for is demos or storyboards, where companies or production studios will create like a template or an example of the commercial they want to put out there, and it's for them to show that particular demo to the client. So let's say they were making like a Coke commercial or something like that. They're going to show the example or the animatic of that commercial to Coke, and then Coke will look at it and say, yeah, let's go ahead and make that commercial, and then they'll go ahead and spend $1 million to go ahead and get that commercial done correctly. So that's another job you could possibly get. You've also got things like audiobooks, kids' books, anything that needs a voice. There's a voiceover job for it. Now that you know the different types of voiceover, and there's plenty more that I probably didn't get to, what type of money is there in voiceover? Well, primarily, there's 2 different types of categories you're looking at. You're looking at union and you're looking at non-union. And some people intentionally stay non-union, but usually if you're a non-union voiceover artist, which is pretty much everyone in the world who is not union, you're usually trying to edge to get into union at some point. If you want to make the big bucks in commercials or video games or cartoons with all those big names out there, where you're going to be going up against people like Brad Pitt or Stanley Tucci, then that's the big money, and that's where the union jobs are at. Now, union primarily is higher pay, but there are less jobs. It requires agents, requires probably a demo of some sort that's probably really professionally well done, and there's a lot of competition. Usually you're going to have to know how to network, and you're going to have to live in one of the 2 big cities for voiceover, which is usually New York City and LA. I think there's a burgeoning voiceover group in San Francisco and Atlanta, but it's nowhere near as big as New York City or LA. When it comes to union, it's not unheard of for a person who does really well in film, TV, or radio to just transfer over to voiceover. So you'll usually see someone who does a specific character on a TV show maybe put onto a commercial for like Mazda or something like that. When it comes to pay, it's more likely to have residuals, which means that it'll be paying you over time. Especially if it's being broadcast over and over. So if you get like a regional or a national, you're likely to see more money on a monthly basis. I got a regional where it was only the Southwest portion, and I was getting paid once every 3 months. And it was a small amount of money, but it was consistent for about a year or 2, so that was pretty good. But here's the thing about union. There's even rungs in union where you're gonna get paid less. Just because you hit union and you get a union job doesn't mean that it's gonna be $2,000 jobs average. There's a scale for union voiceover, and it's small, but it's not crazy small. And as you start getting jobs, if they're not national or if they're just smaller time, then it's going to be smaller paychecks. The other option is non-union. Now, non-union is definitely lower pay, but there are a lot more jobs out there. It usually requires a home studio unless you have a non-union agent, and if you do have a non-union agent, it's probably in those New York City or LA areas. There's still a lot of competition, even if you're doing the non-union agent route and you're getting your agent to send you out on auditions. There's a lot of competition on pay-to-play sites like Voices.com or Voices123, and you don't necessarily require a demo to be a non-union voiceover artist. It's good, it helps, but especially if you're just starting out, you don't require a demo, especially if you're non-union. When it comes to pay, you may find some of the lowest pay jobs or even no pay jobs in non-union voiceover. We're talking student jobs, student films, nonprofit jobs where they're asking for no pay there. But on the other end of the spectrum, you may find higher pay work as well. Like I've found jobs that are similar to union style pay. I've also found jobs that are bigger than the union pay that I've gotten. The one major difference between union and non-union is that if you're non-union, you're probably going to have to produce your own work. That means editing, that means rendering, that means learning the software, that means setting up a makeshift home studio. It's a bit of a time sink and it's a bit of a learning curve, but if you hack at it, I have no doubt any person can learn how to edit and record their own jobs. People have been doing it for years, and it gets easier as technology gets better and better. Now that you know the two different types of voiceover, how do people get jobs? How do they get out there and actually contact the client and get the actual jobs, and how do they get paid, and how does that situation start? Well, the first thing is you get auditions from the actual agent, and this is both for union and non-union. If you have a non-union agent, they usually send you an email and they send you out to a production studio that's nearby. You go in, you sign in, you do the audition, and you walk out and you hope for the best. The second way you get auditions is auditions from home, and this can also be sent out from your agent as well. That's where the agent will send you a message and say, hey, we need you guys to audition for this job tonight and we need it by 8 a.m. tomorrow. And sometimes you could do it with like your iPhone mic, but it's always better to have some kind of home studio anyway. So if you're shooting for union and you already have like a SAG-AFTRA contract or you're already equity, then you know, it's a pretty good idea to actually get at least a makeshift home studio. Not too expensive, but just a small home studio that works for you. The other way you get jobs is through basic networking. Either a client has seen some of your work, they've seen your demo, or they know you from television, or they like your voice, or maybe they met you somewhere when it came to like a class or whatnot. Especially when it comes to going into one of those voiceover areas where you're trying to take classes and get to know people, networking is one of the best ways to get jobs. If you know that there's a good casting director out there giving a class, you might want to take the class and get to know them and get to befriend them and show them that you're such a good voiceover artist that they have to come and get you for certain jobs. The other way you get jobs is through repeat business. If you start trying to get jobs now and you start auditioning after audition after audition, there may be a couple of times where a message will come to you and they'll say like, listen, we really liked your voice, but we don't want you for this. So pop that person into your email, thank them for sending you the message, and hopefully they come back. If you got a job, they are now your client. You may have worked for like a $100 or a $200 job, but they liked you and you did a good job. So when they look for someone like you, or if they've got a bunch of other videos coming up, you may get a lot of repeat business. I know that a good 40% of my jobs, and I do roughly about 6-7 jobs a week, come from repeat business, and especially the best clients, and if you treat them right, they'll keep coming back. The last final way you get jobs, and this is kind of controversial because when it comes to non-union versus union people don't get to play like this on these sites. I'm talking about pay-to-play sites like Voices.com and Voice123. And what pay-to-play sites are basically a middleman between the voiceover client and you. So they are just basically going out, finding clients who need voiceover, giving them access to 50 to 100 voiceover artists to audition for their jobs. Now, there's a bunch of controversy out there whether or not Voices.com or Voice123 are really like taking 70% of the funds or 70% of the profits, which is very much possible. But the fact of the matter is that these pay-to-play sites are a way for voiceover artists, especially non-union voiceover artists. They've never done anything. It's a way for them to make money. And sometimes when you get into an art form or any kind of creative form where there's a possibility of monetary return, you're going to spend more than you make most of the time, especially with things like acting or theater or film. You may spend a lot more money initially on classes and whatnot than any jobs that you get in those first few years. So pay-to-play sites are actually a good practicing ground, and that's a good way to get jobs initially. And if you listen to a couple more episodes, I'll go in more depth about the pluses and minuses of Voices.com and Voice123, but mostly Voices.com. Voice123 has kind of gone downhill for the last 3 years, so basically Voices.com is my personal favorite from those pay-to-play sites. Now, when it comes to voiceover, if you're going to try and take this on as a career, you will be a freelancer. Now, being a freelancer is kind of a very risky job. You get a lot of higher pay for a smaller amount of time actually working, and that's great, but unfortunately you have zero job security. There's no health insurance unless you become union, and then you have to get a certain amount of jobs per year to keep that health insurance going. There's no retirement plans out there. You pretty much have to hustle for every job you get. Now, there are some people out there who are like, oh, this guy makes $300 just by going into a studio for 30 minutes. He's fucking rich. When in actuality, I'm sending out about 60 jobs every week or every 2 or 3 days where all that work just goes to nothing. Out of the 5,000 auditions I've sent out through Voices.com, I maybe have only gotten maybe 500 jobs, 1,000 jobs. If you think about it, I'm doing a lot of stuff that has zero pay, and I'm doing a lot of work for zero pay in the hopes that I get one of those jobs that I can do for like an hour or two and make a decent amount of money to make up for all the time that I was auditioning. You may not be working during the day, but your bread and butter depends on the amount of auditions you do and the amount of jobs you get. Non-union equals more auditions. When it comes to union, it really depends on your agent. Whether they like you, whether they send you out on jobs a lot. There was a time where I was getting 3-4 auditions a week with my agent. It kind of tapered off, and I wasn't getting that many jobs, so I was getting less auditions per week. And if I didn't go off and do my freelancing of non-union jobs on pay-to-play sites, I wouldn't be in New York anymore. So when it comes to union, it really depends on you finding those casting directors, getting to know them, and having them ask your agent to send you in for jobs. Now, I know this was a lot of time and talking, but now you may be asking yourself, should I do voiceover? And if there's one thing I tell everybody is that everyone can do voiceover, unless you have a speech impediment, in which case, go get it fixed, and then come on out and do some voiceover. It really depends on how willing you are and how patient you are, and in some ways, how much money you're willing to spend. I like to think of it as like a cheap school. Instead of books, you've got a microphone. Instead of tuition, you've got a subscription to a pay-to-play site. And you may take an actual class or two. Your homework will be auditioning over and over again and listening to your competition. You've got little side classes where you're learning how to edit, recording things, and learning computer programs. And after a while, and after a lot of auditions, you'll know how to do it. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort, and it's not like a jump in and make $100 every week kind of thing. Not that that's something that can't happen. I'm sure there are people out there who are natural at voiceover and they can go in and kick ass right off the bat. That didn't happen for me. I had to build from the bottom up. No one told me I was good at voiceover. I just wanted to do it. If you can give yourself about a year and a little bit of money to commit to it, you could start making a decent part-time income or even more. And if you're gung-ho about it, you might be able to push it to full-time at one point and have it replace a job that you may not like. So that was the first big step into voiceover. And I hope you got a little bit of information about this, and I hope it wasn't too fast for you. Feel free to go to everythingvoiceover.com. We have articles, we have a media that people can watch and check out if they need more specific information about how to get into voiceover. Thank you so much for hanging in and listening. This has been the first episode of everythingvoiceover.com, the podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening in. Feel free to go to everythingvoiceover.com, shoot us an email, tell us if you like it or if you don't like it, or if you want us to do an entire episode based on a specific section of this podcast, we can definitely do that. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing podcasts based on creating a digital home studio, specifics on voices.com and Voice123, cons and pros on that, whether or not you should go to a conference, the types of software that are out there, pretty much everything you need to know about voiceover before you start spending that sweet money on starting this career. But other than that, thank you so much for listening. My name is Justin D. Torres. Feel free to go to everythingvoiceover.com and check us out. Have a great night.